Welcome back to Draped YouTube channel. Today's class are going to be learning how to make this beautiful shirt dress that we have here. So this dress has a standard collar, as you have seen. It has this beautiful turn up on the sleeve, and it has some drapes on it. It has no side seam, as we have seen. It's a very simple tutorial and it's beautiful. This is something you would like to learn. Kindly stay tuned to the end of this tutorial. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to be drafting this on the paper so that we can see it well. You can also draft on your main bodice directly. So I don't want to have a shoulder seam. I'm working with a Duchess, and the Duchess frills a lot, so I'm trying to reduce the seam lines that I have as much as possible. So my front and back is going to be cut together without any joining on the shoulder. So I'll just cut on my fabric now, and then take it over to my main on my pattern, and then take to my fabric to cut. So now the first thing I'm noting is the length of the half length of my dress. So for me, the half length is going to be around 16 inches. So I'm going to add half an inch to that for joining. So I'll have 16 and half, and then I'll make that into a straight line. Okay, so that's the length for the half length of the dress. So now on the shoulder, which is the upper part, I'm going to take my shoulder measurement, which is 8 inches, and then you're going to measure the sleeve length that you want. That's how long you want the sleeve to be. It's a kimono, so it's going to be cut together. I want my sleeves to be around 6 inches around my bicep area, so I'm going to note that. So we are going to be fixing a turn up to this. You can add your turn up allowance, or you can add the turn up allowance, or you just cut it out separately. So I'm adding 3 inches for that. I'm cutting it out. So now on my shoulder line, I have about 17 inches in total. So now the next line I'm going to be noting is my bust point, which is also my sleeve opening. Okay, so now for my sleeve opening, I'm going to be opening my actual armhole is 8.5 inches, but this is going to be like a free blouse, so I'm going to add like 1.5 inches to that. So my sleeve opening is going to be around 10 inches. So on this end point here, I'm going to note my sleeve opening, and then I'll make that into a straight line. Sorry, I hope you can see it. Okay, so now where my shoulder line stops, I'm going to mark my 10 inches sleeve opening, and then I'm making that into a straight line. So now after marking that, on that point, I'm going to mark my bust measurement. Okay, so let me just make this into a straight line so that it can be easy for us to understand. Okay, so this is my starting line, this is my chest line, and this is my waistline. So on this line now, my bust is 44 divided by 10 by 4 is 11. So I'm going to add like 1 inch for ease and 1 inch for seam allowance. So I'm going to mark 13 inches here for my bust. And for my waist, the waist I'm working with is 37 inches. So 37 inches divided by 4 is around 9.25. okay, so because I'm going to be adding some pleats so that I can have like drapes in front as well, I'm just going to use the same measurement that I have here for the waist as well. So when I'm sewing it, I'm going to pleat it back to my actual waist measurement. So this is what I have so far. So now on this corner part, I'm going to just blend it in so that I don't have anything sharp. So that's what I have for the upper part. So for the neckline is going to have a collar, standard collar. So I'm going to be working with a neck depth of 3 inches for a width of 3 inches for the front, and 1 inch for the depth of the back. Then for the depth of the front, I'm going to be working with 3 inches, and then I'm going to connect all of that. So I'll go ahead now and cut this on my main fabric, and then we'll move to the skirt. So my pattern is cut out now. This is what it looks like. I've cut the back, so I'm going to cut the back first. After cutting the back, I'm going to use it to cut the front. So if you notice, my pattern does not have any shoulder slants because I want to cut the front and back together. I don't want to have any seam on my shoulder. Okay, so I have placed it on my fabric now, and I've cut the back. So I'm just going to notch the shoulder point. Remember, there is no seam, so that it can guide me. So you just notch it a little and then I'm going to open it up now so that I can now cut out my front neckline. So you can see there's no joining on the shoulder, so you just fold it into two like this. Okay, so the folding is like this. You fold into two like this first, so you have front and back with the shoulder seam together. So after that you fold again before you place your pattern on it. So now I'm going to hold this with pins because this is like silk, it's very shaky, and then I'm going to place my pattern again so that I can cut out my front. So after cutting the front, I'm going to go ahead and slash the front open. Remember, there's going to be a button placket on the front because there are buttons on the front, so I'll just slash it open. I'm just being careful so that my fabric does not shift. So the front neckline is cut out as well, so I'll just go ahead and slash the front open. So after this, I'm going to keep the half length and then we'll work on the skirt. So this is what we have now for the upper parts. So this is the front and this is the back underneath it. Okay, so for the skirt, I have folded my pattern into two, and then I'm going to just start from where my half length stops. So my half length stops around 16.5 inches, which is here. So from there I'm going to mark my hip line. My hip line is 26 inches, so I'll mark 26 inches here. And then from there, if you are going to be shaping it in form of a pencil skirt, you need your knee measurement. But for me, I'm just going to work with my hip measurements for the hem as well. So I'll just go and measure where I want this dress to be. I want mine to stop around 45 inches, so I'm going to add 1 inch for allowance, and I have 46 inches there. So I'm going to connect like this. So that's my hem line and this is my hip line. So after marking like this, what I'm going to mark next is my waist measurement. My waist measurement is 37 divided by 4 is 9.5. So I'm using my actual waist measurement here. Remember, I want to add pleats to the half length. That was why I used my bust measurement. So I'm working with my actual waist measurement of 9.5 inches, and then I'm adding a little bit of ease, half an inch, and then I'll add 1 inch for my seam allowance. So here my hip is 11 and my hip is 46, so that's 11.5. So I have 11.5 inches here, and then I'm going to add 1 inch for my seam allowance. So this is not enough, so I'm just going to cut this pattern without allowance. Okay, so because my pattern is not enough and I don't want to join, so when I'm cutting on my fabric, I'm just going to add allowance to it. So that's my waist, that's my hip, and then the measurement that I have here on the hip is what I'm going to take on the hem as well. So that's 11.5 inches, and then I'm going to mark down and then connect it. So this is the pattern that I'm going to work with for my skirt. So remember, it's on fold, so I'm just going to use one as my front and the other one as my back. So I'm going to cut this pattern out now. So I've cut out the pattern that I have, and then this is going to be for my front. So I'm going to label this part my center front CF, and the other one I'm just going to work with it as my back. So I'll just go ahead and label this my CB. Okay, so remember, if you want to join your sides together, this is how you're going to place it on the side. You join the sides together. So here what we're going to do now is to join our side together as well, but we're going to be using a masking tape. We are doing this because our dress is not going to be having any seam. It won't have any joining on the side, so we are going to be closing the side seam on our pattern before we transfer it to our fabric. So I'm going to make sure that everything aligns well. You can also draw your hip line on the other pattern, but I just placed a dot here so I can see it. So once it aligns like that, I'm going to use my tape to hold this down. Okay, so after holding it down, remember our waist measurement is not the same with the hip, so that's why you have it like this. So in order for us to close this, remember this is also part of the side and we need to close it. what I'm going to do now is to extend my hip measurement to the center back hip line. I'm extending to the center back, and then I'm going to slash open the hip. So after slashing open my hip line, I'm going to use it to close it up like this, so that I can easily close up what I have there. So after closing it like that, I'm going to use my masking tape to hold it as well. So you can see we've transferred what we have there, and then I'm going to go ahead and then close it. So you can see now that our side now is completely closed, and this is the center front here. The center front is here, and then the center back is there. So the next thing now is to introduce those volumes that we see, those drapes that we see on the skirt. And I'm going to do this using slash and spread method. So to do this, I'm going to be slashing from the center front here. Sorry, I'm going to be slashing from the center front here all the way to the side. So I'll just draw out my slash line. It should be as long as you want and the direction that you want for the drape. So if you want the drape to just be straight like this, you draw your pattern straight, but I want my drapes to be a little bit slanted. Okay, so that is why I'm not going to be drawing my slash line straight. So following what I already have here, you can see that we have like slant lines here. So I'll just continue in that form, and then I'll make my pattern slanted like that. So you draw as much drapes as much lines as you want. So these lines are what is going to represent the drapes that you're going to have. So here I am drawing another one. So for this tutorial, I'm not going to be drawing too much drapes. I can draw like 3 to 4 slash lines, so that it can be easy for us to see what I'm doing very well, and then to be easy for us to control. So I'm drawing another one here. I hope the camera is taking everything, and then I'll probably have another line here. So these are the slash lines that I have so far. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to slash it open. Okay, so for us to see what I'm doing well, I am gonna have to draft this on a smaller pattern. So after joining the side seam with your masking tape like this, the next thing I did was to introduce my slash line on my skirt. So like I said, if you want your drapes to just come straight like this, you draw your lines straight. But if you want it slanted, what I did was just to follow the opening. Remember, I transferred the space that I have on this side to my hip line here. So now the slant that I have on the slant that I have on my hip line already, that's what I'm following. And then I started drawing my slash lines along those slants like this. And like I said, you draw the lines depending on the amount of drapes that you want. So for this tutorial, I have about 4 lines there, which is going to form like 4 drapes for me. So after drawing your slash lines like this, this is the center front and this is the center back. So you cut from your center front to your center back, but you don't cut completely. So from here now, I'm going to cut towards the back. I'll cut along the lines that I have. So here I'm going to cut as well, and then I'll cut the last one. Okay, so after slashing it open like this, you place it on a fresh paper and then you spread it to introduce volumes. So that's what I'm going to be doing to this bigger pattern. Okay, so you can see some green lines. That's because I redrew my drape, my style lines. So after looking at my pattern, I realized that my style line, my drape is going to get to almost the hem of my dress, and I don't want that. So what I want is for my drapes to stop around 10 inches or thereabouts. Okay, so around 10 inches away from my hem line, which is why I noted this. Okay, so I drew another style line. I'm just going to turn it to the wrong side so that I can use this to t-shirt. So now this is my center front again. So this is the hem of my dress. I want the drapes to stop around 10 inches. So from the hem, I measured 10 inches upward, which was here. Then after that, on the other side as well, I measured 10 inches upward. That's my center back. I measured 10 inches upward on my center back. So what I have left, I want 5 style lines. So I just divided that into the 5 style lines. So I used an interval of 4 inches on each of my style lines. So from the upper part here, I marked 4 inches. Again, I marked another 4 inches. I marked another one here. So I just marked 4 inches. So you can see I have 1 2 3 4 5 on my center back. So now to connect it to my center front, of course the one that goes with my hip line, remember I already have an opening on my hip line and I want it slanted, so I just connected my ruler to the one that aligns with the hip. So I connected it to the hip line like this. Okay, so my first slash line is connected. So after that, now on the second one, from my hip line I just measured around 3 inches downwards on my center front. I hope my camera is taking this. Okay, you can actually draw whatever slash line you want, but there's a particular way I want mine to look like. That's why I'm taking my time to do this. So from there I connected it to my side again. So the second slash line is done. So I have the ones for the upper part. So now what the line that I have left here, so what I did was just to also divide that as well. So you can divide that into 3 or however it is you want it to be. So I have 3 inches here, I have another one here, and then I just marked it like that. So what I did was to now connect the 3 lines that I have. Remember I still have these 3 points. I connected it to these new lines that I have. So this is so that I can still have my slanted lines. Sorry, my table is not big enough, so I can't just take it, but you can just draw your style lines anyhow you want. By the time I spread this on the paper, we can see what this looks like. So what I'm doing now is connecting these style lines together, and then I'll go ahead and then cut it off. So this is the new style lines that I have. You can see now that this line is not going to get to my hem. So you can see my hem here, and this is the last line that I have. So I still have enough space for my hem, and then you can see how the drape is going to go. The drape is not going to be straight like this. The drape is slanted towards the center front, which is what I want. So now what I'm going to do now is to cut open this. You are going to cut it from your center front to the center back, but you're not going to cut it completely. So when you get to the tip of the center back, we stop and then we spread it on our fabric. Okay, so I have gone ahead to spread my pattern. You can see the space that I have in between them. So you just spread according to how much you want, and then you can see where my slash line stops. So like I said, I want to have like 10 inches away from my hem, which was why I redrew my line. Assuming I followed this line earlier, it will be so close to my hem, and I don't want that. So remember, this pattern does not have an allowance. So on this side, on the and actually you don't need an allowance for this, because remember we have closed the side seam. Okay, so I forgot to mention that in the video. You don't need a seam allowance for this pattern because we are not going to be sewing it on the side. The side is closed, so that was why we did not had the seam allowance there. So now I'm just going to go ahead and cut out this exact pattern that I have on my fabric, and then I'm going to place notches where I opened so that it can guide me on how to pleat this back to its original size. So I have cut it out, and this is what it looks like. So I left half an inch allowance at the center back so that I can join the center back together. Remember, they have to be together, so I left half an inch to join it, and then on the side I notched where I have my slash line when it stops, and then at the side seam area you need to notch it as well. Remember, there is no seam there, so that I can get the side seam, you are going to place a notch there as well to guide you. So what we just need to do now is to go ahead and pleat this. So we'll move to the cutting table to continue. Okay, so this is what my skirt looks like now, as you have seen. So the next thing now is for me to go ahead and pleat this back to its original size. So now you can see where I placed my notches. So those notches are what is going to guide me on how I'm going to place it. So what I'm going to do is now to pleat from notch to notch, just like this. So you're going to be pleating on your center front side, of course. Remember, that's where you spread it open, and then I'm going to be pleating towards the waistline. This is the hem. Okay, so I'm not pleating like this, I'm pleating from the hem side towards the waistline like this. So after pleating, I'm going to hold it with my pin. So I'll go ahead and look for where I have another place, which is here. I'm going to pleat from notch to notch again, and then I'm going to hold with my pin. So that is how you're going to pleat everything. So you can spread as much as you want. I spread by around 6 to 7 inches. It's really a lot. So if you don't want yours to be this big, you just spread like 3 to 4 inches. It's fine. So now I'll just continue to pleat from where I have my notches, and then I'll take it to the sewing machine and sew it down. So when you want to cut, you make sure that your fabric is on fold so that you can cut the two sides. Remember, the pattern is just one side of the body, so you have to cut two sides by placing your fabric on fold before you cut. So now I'm done pleating it, and this is what I have. So immediately you pleat it, you see that your center back is now straight again. So you can see that we have our center back straight, and then we're going to be having pleats from the center back towards the center front. So the same thing I have done here, I'm going to do to the other side as well. Then after that, I'm going to bring it together. So I'll go ahead and sew my center back together. Remember, we added half an inch for this, so I'll go ahead and join the center back together. Then after joining the center back, I'm going to use my sewing machine to hold this pleat in place. I'm going to sew on the pleats to hold it in place as well, and then I'll bring it back so that we can work on the upper part. So I have gone ahead to join it together at the center back, so you can see my seam line. So because my fabric frills a lot, I used French seam so that it can be this neat. You can also sew it normally and then usage it. So this is what I have on the wrong side. Okay, so I'm going to keep the skirt aside now and work on the. So this is the blouse here, and the first thing I'm going to do is to notch the midpoint of the back. Remember, the front is already slashed, so I'm going to notch the midpoint of the back as well, and then I'm going to pleat it back to my actual waist measurement. Okay, so I'm going to, my waist measurement is 37 divided by 4 is 9.5. So on this half now I have about 13 inches. So I'm going to remove 1 inch or half an inch for joining, and whatever excess that I have, I'm going to pleat it. Okay, so I have taken my tiny pleats, as you can see, and then I'll go ahead and sew it down. I made some pleats on the front as well. So after sewing it down, the next thing is to create my turn up. Remember, we added extra 3 inches for turn up. So for the turn up, what you want to do is just to, on the sleeve area, you can see the sleeve, so I'm just going to fold in like 1/4 of an inch, and then I'm going to fold in the remaining 3 inches that I created. Okay, and sew it down. So after sewing it down, I'm going to turn it out again for the turn up. So the first one I'm going to do now is to go ahead and sew half an inch or 1/4 of an inch, and then sew this down. Okay, so I have sewn down the pleats, as you can see. I've sewn them down, and then for the side as well, for the sleeve, I have hemmed it, okay, with the allowance that I left. So you can see now that it is neatly hemmed. So to create the turn up, what you just need to do now is to this hemming that we have here, you can see how wide it is. I'm just going to fold it by half. Okay, just what you have here, divide it into 2 and fold. So after folding it, because I don't have a seam on my shoulder line, assuming you have a seam on your shoulder, it will be obvious, but because I don't have a seam, I'm just going to fold it into 2 like this and note my center point. So after noting the center point, what you want to do is to fold this into 2, and then you hold it down with a stitch on your center point. So after folding all around like this, by the time you are sewing the side as well, you are going to hold this other side and then you iron it down. So I'll go ahead and sew it. Okay, so you can see I have sewn it down here. I'm just going to cut off the excess thread that I have. Then after sewing it on this point, I'm going to go ahead and iron it down so that I can have my turn up, so you can see the space that will have in between them. So now the next thing you're going to do is to place it like this, and then you sew it on the side. So you can add your belt externally, you can just have your belt separate from your outfit, but for me I want my belt to be together, so I'm just going to input. I have cut out a long belt and then I just hemmed it on the side. You can also cut two for you to turn it out, but I don't have enough fabric, so I have cut it out like this, and then I'm just going to place the belt beside on the side like this, and then place it again so that I can sew it by the side. So after sewing this, I'll join the skirt to the blouse. So I have joined the sides as well, okay, and then I inserted my belt. So this is the side seam. So this is what the upper part is looking like now. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to bring in the skirt, and then I'm going to join it on the waistline to the upper part. Okay, so this is my blouse. Now I'm going to bring the skirt and then sew it, join it together. So make sure you have exactly the same thing, because we have pleated this back to our waist measurement. It's going to be the same thing. So you just match your notches together, your center, back, your sides, and then you sew. So I have joined it on the waistline now, and you can see what our shirt dress is looking like. So now the next thing I'm going to do is to add my plackets at the center front like this. So I have cut out my placket. You just need to measure what you have on the center front and use that to cut out your placket. So I have cut out my placket. The width of the placket is about 3 inches, so I've just folded in like half an inch on both sides like this, so that I can have this. So I'll take it to the sewing machine now, and then I'm going to tuck my center front inside this, and then I'll sew it down for both sides. So after doing that, I'm going to fix my collar to the neckline. Okay, so I have fixed my placket. As you can see, I just sew it just like I explained, and then on one side I made my buttonholes. So I have a tutorial on how you can make your buttonholes manually on the channel as well. So if you don't know how to, you can check that out. But if you have a sewing machine that can make the buttonholes for you, it will make the work easier. And then I went ahead to fix my shirt collar. I have a tutorial on how you can do that as well on the channel. So what I'm going to do now is to fix button on the other placket so that I can button it up. So I'm going to be fixing these small buttons on that side, and that was what guided the size that I made for my buttonhole as well. So you can see the drapes that we have here is facing upwards towards the waistline. So you make sure that your drape is like this so that it can be continuous, and you can see that the drapes are not straight, it's just bent, just the way we drew our style line. So I'll go ahead and fix my buttons now, and then I'll take it to the mannequin so that we can see what it looks like. Okay, so this is what our dress is looking like now. You can see the turn up that we have on the sleeve area. This is the placket and the button that I fixed to mine. This is the waistline, and this is our belt. So like I said, your belt can be external, or you can have it together with your dress just like I have mine. So this is what the full view of the dress looks like, and you can see how beautiful those drapes came out. So your drapes can be as big as you want, that is totally up to you. And you can see that my drapes are not straight, they are a bit slanted, just like I drafted this, because this is how I want it. So this is what it looks like on the side. You can see that there are no side seam, and then the drape is coming from the center back. So this is what the side looks like, and this is what it looks like on the back as well. So you can see how I tied the belt. I made it from back to front. You can also tie it anyhow you want, and this is what the back looks like. You can see how beautiful this dress came out and how simple it is to make it. You just need to watch the video, understand it, and then you draft it bit by bit. I hope you enjoyed making this beautiful tutorial with me. If you enjoyed it, let us know in the comment section. Like, comment, and subscribe to our channel, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.